We are at the dawn of a new economic era, a new economic age, which is built on and driven by digital transformation that's being powered in turn by all of these technologies that we in our companies are bringing to our customers. Your cloud, mobile, social, big data, now Internet of Things, augmented and virtual reality, AI, 3D printing, robotics, all of this stuff that we collectively call the third platform. And so what I want to do this morning is really kick us off by examining two things. One, very quickly, when is this digital economy going to reach scale? The DX economy, as we sometimes call it. Because that's important, because that's going to be driving so much growth and demand for the tech industry. So how quickly is that coming toward us? And then, more important, I'm going to spend most of my time just asking the question, with this DX economy becoming more and more a core part of the global economy, how does that change the tech industry? What do we need to do? How do we need to change who we are and what we do in order to thrive and to lead in the DX economy era? So I think that'll keep us busy, I think, to just kick off the day. And but before I start my comments, I just want to reintroduce you to our map of the territory, you might say. So some of you, I'm sure, I hope most of you have seen this picture before. This is our kind of shorthand icon or image for what's important in the tech industry right now. We call this the third platform. And you can see in the middle there are what we call the four pillars: cloud, mobile, social, big data. And then around the blue edge on the outside, you can see what we've called innovation accelerators, so 6 of them. I mentioned some of them already: AI and cognitive, IoT, augmented and virtual reality, robotics, a new generation of security, 3D printing. You get the idea. So 10 things that really, if you think about it, are the new raw material for developers and for innovators who are trying to build amazing new things with technology. So think about digital transformation. This is the raw material. You might think of this as the palette of colors for innovators. And then, of course, the other part of our map is, well, what are all the industries, all of our customers doing at the business level to use these technologies? You know, what are the new services, the new ways of operating, the new offerings, the new ways of establishing relationships with customers, the digitization and transformation of their industries. So we call that, of course, nothing original there, digital transformation. You'll hear me occasionally slip into the shorthand of DX. I sometimes will call digital transformation DX. So if you hear that, that's what that's about. But what's great about the marketplace today is that there is this virtuous circle that the third platform technologies are making possible all of these digital transformations up at the business level for our clients. And then, of course, the more digital transformation that goes on, the more demand is driven for those third platform technologies. So we are just at the beginning of this big flywheel of growth and demand and innovation. And so how far along are we, and is this thing hitting scale yet? So that was the first question I wanted to address. Let's take a little look. Let's look at the technology side of this picture. Now, I've shown a picture like this for the last 5 or 6 years, so I don't think there'll be very many surprised people here. But if you take a look, the blue bar, that's spending on third platform technology. So those 10 technologies I talked about before. And the gray is everything else, sort of the older technologies. So you can see 2016 is the far left. So already, third platform technologies are really the main show in terms of what customers are buying, where the demand is. And you can see as you move more and more to the right side, as we get to 2021, the third platform's domination of the technology space is basically complete, right? Anybody surprised? No, I didn't think so. What's more important, though, is that other side, that business level, what's happening with actually the digital transformations themselves. How far along are we and our customers in that area? And so some of you, our assertion is that we are on the cusp of digital transformation reaching macroeconomic scale. So that over the next 3, 4, 5 years and then beyond, we're going to start seeing digital transformations no longer be just projects or sandboxes or initiatives or even business units devoted to digital business. It'll be at the center of what most of our customers do and what they are in their marketplace. Why do I say that? Well, some of you may have noticed last year that Accenture put out a study that attempted to size the percentage of the global economy that is already digitized. So again, what does digitized economy mean? It means using these third platform technologies to change the way companies, to change their offerings, to change the way they operate, and to, of course, change the nature of their relationships with others in the marketplace. And they estimated that if you take a look at the overall global GDP, that in 2015, so that's what they were looking at here, what is that, 22.5%. 22.5% of all the global economy is already digitized. And in fact, in the United States, they were asserting that about a third, 33% of the US economy is already digitized, and that by the time we get to 2020, about 37 or 38% will be digitized. So that's pretty amazing, I think, considering how large and diverse the economy is. And for our part at IDC, we made a prediction in our Futurescape exercise in the fall that basically says that for our largest customers, so Global 2000 type of customers, this process is happening even faster. That by 2020, half or more of the Global 2000 would have the majority of their businesses digitized, the majority of their revenue dependent on their ability to digitize offerings, operations, and relationships. And by the way, the less than 50% of the Global 5,000 or 2000, you better believe it won't be 0% digitized. It'll be 20, 30, 40% digitized. So the big guys, they're farther down the road. So to me, this is basically what gives us confidence to say that by 2025, you look at the global economy and you look at the digital economy, and by and large, by the time we get to 2025, these will be pretty much one and the same. The global economy will be mostly digitized, right? So we are reaching macroeconomic scale. One other element I want to share about the change that will come with this digital economy era is not about the money and the spending. It's also about the pace of business. And I want to show you 3 very scary charts. These are kind of symptoms, you might say, or attributes of life in the DX economy. So this is on the side, this is a chart that shows Amazon Web Services, new product rollouts and major enhancements for the last 9 years. And on the left side of the chart, you'll see that 9 years ago they released 24 things, and then the next year it was 48 things. And you can kind of see the shape. Last year it was 1,100 things, right? And so Amazon's not the only one. I think for most of us who have moved on to the cloud in terms of our delivery of our offerings, and we've gone to kind of a rapid DevOps release of software-based stuff, we are also getting on this very rapid rate of release of new innovation into the marketplace. So innovation supply is going off the charts. How about consumption? Well, here's a chart that shows, probably some of you have seen it, the adoption time, the time it takes to get to high percentage adoption in the US of various technologies. And as you go toward closer to our time, recent years, that's the right side of the chart. You see that the adoption curve is like a vertical line. It's basically instant adoption. And why is that? Again, mobile, cloud technologies, just very easy for customers to absorb and take in. And then the last chart I want to show you about life in the digital economy is about competition. Right, so I'm sure many of you have seen this. This is a chart that was put together that shows the average age, corporate age, of companies in the S&P 500. And on the left side of that chart is 1960, and you can see the average age is around 60 years, 60-year-old companies. Well, that was the average in 1960. You go to recent years, that's on the right side, it's looking more like 10 to 15 years. Why is that? I think we can all guess. It's in this third platform digital cloud era. it's a lot easier for companies with good ideas to be able to very quickly get those ideas out and up at scale and to push out traditional competitors, from the upper ranks of market share and to disrupt these industries. So we've seen this happening. So, faster supply of innovation, faster consumption of innovation, and lots more fast-moving competitors coming in, right? We're entering this era where third platform is the mainstream. Digital transformation is quickly becoming the core of the entire global economy. And the ability to compete depends on speed and scale of innovation, right? So that's pretty daunting. So when I look at this, it leads me really to the second thing I want to talk about this morning, which is the most important thing that brings us all here together, which is looking at this economy coming at us quickly. What do we need to do in order to be able to compete and lead in this crazy but unbelievably fast-growing economy that offers all of us opportunity if we can transform ourselves into the types of companies that can compete in this environment? So what kind of company do we need to become, and our clients, by the way, our customers, what do they need to do in their industry in order to compete in a digital economy that looks like this? And so I would say, I forgot. For those of you here, this is a reward from last year. You may remember I showed a video of Lucille Ball, Lucy in the Chocolate Factory. Remember all that? And the chocolates are coming. You have to get them into the boxes quickly, and they're having trouble keeping up. And then the boss at the end comes and yells, "Speed it up a little," just to rub sand into the wound. So anyway, that is where we are. We're in the speed it up period. So what kind of companies do we need to look like? When we thought about this at IDC, we thought about companies that were born into this digital economy, digital native companies. And what do these companies have in common? Many of them are built around this idea of a graph model, Now, some of you may be familiar with this. Some of you may be saying, what the heck is a graph? Right? So a graph is, if you've ever seen these charts, and let me show you two digital native companies that are built around graph models, one Facebook and the other Google. Facebook, you've seen pictures of social networks. It's all the dots, right? So we're talking about connecting the dots. The dots are all of us, and it's our friends, and it's their friends. And it's information about our likes and our dislikes and our behaviors and just about everything else they could possibly collect on us. So it's this interconnected network of entities and information at massive scale. And so one way you could think about it, again, is, as it says here, it represents a system of interconnected and interrelated things. And again, it's massive scale. Another example is Google. Google, I don't know if you're aware, they re-architected their search engine around something they call a knowledge graph, which is basically their model of every thing and person and idea in the universe, and trying to make sense of what all the relationships are between all of those. How's that for an ambitious model for building your company around that? Right? So this is really, it's a digital native, highly networked, massive ecosystem. Again, massive scale. And so why do I bring this up? It's because in order for us and our customers to compete in this incredible fast-paced, massive volume of innovation digital economy, I think we're going to have to build ourselves around a graph model. Not necessarily a social graph, not necessarily a knowledge graph, something more that I would call a digital innovation graph. Right? So a graph, an ecosystem, a massive scale digital ecosystem that's built around building the ability to create and deliver digital innovation into the marketplace. That's what a digital innovation graph is all about, right? So what I'm going to talk about this morning is how do we look at this type of model, find ourselves in this model, and then decide, well, how do we engineer ourselves? What should we do in order to build what's essentially a digital native model in order to compete and deliver to this rising demand for digital innovation, right? So, and by the way, I'm also going to show you that more of your customers than you would possibly think are already building a digital innovation graph, a massive digital innovation ecosystem to allow them to compete in their industries. Right? So customers are building this, they need help in doing it, and they're going to judge you on how well you're doing in turning yourself into this type of model. So how do we start? Let's take a look. Like most strategies and approaches for being successful in a market, it starts outside in. It starts with looking at what are our customers trying to accomplish, and in this case, in the digital economy. And so you can see on the right side, this purple bubble, that is our representation of all of the digital transformation use cases that our customers are trying to execute in order to compete in their marketplace and their industries that are changing. Now, at the very top, I want to show you a pretty crazy number. This is the amount of money in 2019, $2.1 trillion, that we predict that customers, our customers, are going to be spending on technology and technology-related services to execute digital transformation in their companies. So this is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for those of us in the IT industry as we look over the next several years. This is by far the biggest and the fastest growing part of opportunity for us. However, I think it's pretty clear, I think all of us probably use digital transformation, don't we, in our marketing and our advertising and our sales pitches and so forth to customers. Digital transformation is nothing new. We're all probably using it and talking about it. I want to share a few thoughts. The first one is that that is no longer good enough, right? So if we want to actually compete for this opportunity, we're going to have to laser beam in to much more detailed definition of, well, exactly what digital transformation use cases are we and our partners aiming to serve. So IDC, we just recently completed a taxonomy, developed a taxonomy of over 450 digital transformation use cases, believe it or not, over 450 of them. And I'm sure that we've missed quite a few. That will grow. What I want to show you right now is here are just some of them, the ones that are kind of the higher growth. So again, this comes from our spending guides, IDC spending guides on IoT and AR, VR, and AI, and what have I forgotten? Robotics, 3D printing, but sizing different types of digital transformation projects. Higher growth is sort of up on the scale, up above the top of the slide, and then the bigger bubbles are kind of more spending. So you get a little bit of a feel. And by the way, Crawford will give you a little bit more detail in a moment, but you can download these slides as well from our website. You'll get that information shortly in case some of this is hard to read. But I want to give you a flavor, some examples of some of these digital transformation use cases. So GE, now they're neighbors, right, in Boston. This is probably one that everybody knows, right? So in the world of industrial manufacturing, industrial equipment, predictive analytics, predictive maintenance, their Predix platform and the community they're building around it is all about digital transformation of that sector through the use of technology, through data, through AI, through IoT. It's probably the #1 priority that Jeff Immelt, their CEO, has right now, is getting their digital platform and ecosystem built. Another example, Toyota. I'm sure many of you probably saw last year that Toyota announced a $1 billion investment in AI to support their connected cars and autonomous vehicle initiatives. Going to maybe a smaller company you may or may not have ever heard of, that's Lemonade. This is in the insurance industry. They just came really to market within the last year. And if you haven't heard of them, you will. They specialize in renter insurance, other types, but renter insurance. A lot of millennials are their customers. And they use AI and use bot technology to accelerate the speed of cutting a new policy, so renter policy, they can do that in minutes, something like 2 or 3 minutes. And here's the amazing thing. They can process a claim in seconds. I heard someone mention 7 seconds. So that is absolutely game-changing. You talk to anybody in the insurance industry, that is totally game-changing. And that's probably, it's no surprise that of their investors, 5 or 6 of them are among the largest reinsurance giants in the world, right, are backing this new startup that's using third platform technologies in insurance. Thinking about startups, let's move to the life sciences, health industry. Zymeworks. Zymeworks is a pharma company, a life science company. They use a lot of cloud computing and machine learning to do molecular modeling. They create biotherapeutics or treatments for cancer, for immune diseases, and again, represent the vanguard of new AI-powered diagnostics and treatments in lots of disease areas. And by the way, just like Lemonade, 3 of the Zymeworks investors are 3 of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. Right, so you're seeing a pattern there. I want you to take that thought. That is large corporates in an industry investing in innovative third platform digital transformation startups in their industry. I want you to put a pin in that. Let's hold that for a second up here. We're going to come back to that because that's a very important trend in the industry. If we go back to some of the bigger guys, American Express, I think we all know, is using AI like crazy there to detect fraud, fraudulent transactions, and as well to find new customers. And then last but not least, in retail, the world of omni-channel retailing, Lowe's is using a boatload of third platform technologies in order to mesh together its online customer experience and its in-store customer experience. So what's the bottom line of all this? To me, very simple. We're going to hear later, by the way, Bob Parker is going to talk about digital transformation, he and colleagues in the tracks. We're going to hear from Sandra Ng, who's going to talk about the amazing digital transformations happening in Asia, unbelievable hotbed. But I've got a couple of simple points. One is that if you are trying to compete for that $2.1 trillion, you have to identify which of these are 19, but which of the 450 or more digital transformation use cases you are going to aim at. Because if you're a generic digital transformation, that's not going to cut it. Right? And why is that? It's because that at the end of the day, you're going to have to think about those digital transformation use cases, and you're going to have to step back into the technology supply chain and ask yourself, if I want to serve those DX use cases, how does my value connect? How do I connect the dots to developers, to data providers, to channel players? What do I do around the new infrastructure, IoT? How do I connect to industry platforms and communities? Because let's face it, no one, remember the scale of innovations and the pace of innovations, who is equipped to serve those by yourselves? No one is. Absolutely no one. So the only hope that you have is to create a large digital innovation community and ecosystem, a graph, right? So that is where we need to be thinking about what do we need to do to actually execute against those digital transformation opportunities. So now, the whole day, we are going to have a load of sessions that dig into every one of these. This almost looks like our agenda, the tracks. The developers, we've got data, industries, you name it. So I'm not going to recap what all of my colleagues or preview what all my colleagues are going to say. I'm going to probably talk about 1 or 2 important things in each of these digital innovation neighborhoods. But my main point is I'm going to talk about how we need to connect the dots among all of these as part of our own strategy to grab that digital transformation, $2.1 trillion, get our share of that. Okay, so let's start. Let's look at, this is really the table stakes. If you're going to be competing in the digital economy as a tech provider, a solutions and a services provider, you have to be you have to be optimized around what I call the new digital innovation infrastructure. And that's got 2 main parts. It's got the cloud at the core, and it's got this amazingly large and increasingly diverse ecosystem, you might say, of connected devices at the edge, the Internet of Things. So let's talk about the cloud for a minute. Now, we've talked a lot about the cloud at Directions over the last, most of the last 10 years, right? So how much more is there to talk about? But believe it or not, there are a few things, and I do want to point out that are important for us to think about. One is that we've been waiting for quite a few years to get to this point in 2017 and on out to 2020, this next few years, where the cloud is not just about the new things, it's kind of growing, it's growing fast, it's growing faster, it's getting bigger, it's getting bigger. Okay, now we're at the pivot point where over the next few years, we're going to see most things that our customers do are going to be riding on the cloud. You can see our prediction by 2020, 2/3 of all enterprises' infrastructure and software-related expenses are going to be about the cloud. Again, that doesn't surprise people. If it surprises them, it probably surprises them. They say, why only 2/3? Shouldn't it be bigger? And I just want to remind you that, all of our customers are carrying this big ball of legacy, around behind them. And so it's not easy to get all the traditional stuff over, but they're moving there. And so it's probably good to look at a leading indicator, which is, what's the mentality? What's the planning strategy for CIOs around cloud? And so IDC's Cloud View survey, which is of about 11,000 CIOs, we conducted it just last November and December. And we found that 70% of CIOs have a cloud-first strategy when it comes to any kind of investments in IT now. And so what that just basically means is if I'm doing something and doing something significant, I'm going to first ask, can I do it on the cloud? And a good example of that is a friend of mine, Phuong Tram, who is CIO of DuPont. And as you can probably tell, Phuong is kind of my vintage. He's not a young digital hipster. He has been around a while, is very experienced, but he is definitely a cloud-first CIO. And when we were chatting a few weeks ago, he was saying, well, there's a very good reason we're cloud-first at DuPont. He said, if you think of DuPont, you think of all the industrial chemicals and it's 100+ years of history. And he said, Frank, DuPont is no longer the company that it was 5 or 6 years ago, because over the last few years, we have moved businesses and capabilities into new capabilities in and moved old stuff out. And we've moved the low value out, we've moved high value in. So basically they've changed $60 billion worth of their revenue stream. They've changed their DNA to keep evolving. And he said, without having so many of our core systems now in the cloud, so API, easy integration, scalable, and so on and so forth, relieved of a lot of the heavy capital investment, we're able to move much more quickly. So agility, not IT agility, yes that, but business agility is probably the #1 reason that he's cloud first. So, I think most of us know that, but in case you're still thinking it's all about cost, it's not just about IT cost, it's really about the cost, it's opportunity cost to compete in your industry. That's the cloud. The other reason, of course, is innovation, right? Do any of us have any issues imagining that, right? That the cloud has become effectively the launch pad of just about every single new innovation from the tech industry, except for the things that show up in IoT devices, right? So Tom will talk about AR, VR a little while from now, robotics, but anything outside of that edge, it's created on and it's launched out of the cloud. Think about all the things that have come, new types of hardware instances, new types of security things. So compliance now is a service, blockchain is now coming as a service, threat analytics as a service, all of the IoT back-end services, robotic back-end services, all of the AI technologies and all of the things that are spinning out of AI, so vision processing and language processing. And you better believe that whatever's next, anyone want to make a guess? Where do you think the next wave of technology innovations will be launched? Where? By the way, this is an easy question. Where will the next wave of technology innovations arise from? Anyone venture? Somebody. Yes. India? Well, that may be. I was thinking more like the cloud. Okay, the cloud. Okay, is anyone listening? All right, so I think we all know this. So, it's funny, some people are saying, well, with the growth of IoT on the edge, the poor old cloud, it's time to fold the tent. That's yesterday's news. The cloud is at an end. How many of you have seen that? There was a webcast that went around a couple of months ago kind of to this effect. Believe me, the cloud is not becoming less important. It's not fading away. But one last thing I want to say about the cloud is that it is absolutely changing significantly. We talked about in our predictions in the last few months about this idea of Cloud 2.0, that the next 10 years of cloud, and really the next few years of cloud, is going to start, we're going to see the cloud morphing and evolving into something that's quite different from the last 10 years of the cloud. And just to show you a couple of different ways that's happening, people think of cloud as being very centralized all around these big hyperscale data centers. We predict that over the next several years, we're going to start seeing more and more of cloud activity happening out at the edge. So you can see by 2019, 43% of IoT data will be processed out at the edge of the cloud. How many people here saw, so Amazon Web Services last fall, they announced something called the Snowball Edge appliance, which is basically an appliance that sits out at the edge, next to IoT devices, and it's got a lot of the cloud code from the data center sitting right in the middle of it. And so we're going to see more and more of the cloud come to a neighborhood near you, and really more to the point, near your IoT devices. So this idea of just central, no, cloud will be going everywhere. Another dimension that will change is it will be the trusted place. Who would have thought that? The cloud is like, people originally were thinking, well, the cloud, it's great, it's economical, it's flexible, but heck, it's out there in the middle of a field, you might say, metaphorically, people can go and hack the thing. No, by the time we get to 2020, it's going to be clear that the cloud is the place that's the most secure place in the digital economy. Why is that? It's because of the innovations I just talked about. Think about things like encryption, cloud-powered encryption, and think about threat analytics, again, all powered out of the cloud. Think now a blockchain as a service is starting to come as a service. So the best new innovations in security will come out of the cloud. So that's, if you aren't in the cloud and your customers aren't in the cloud in 2020, they should be considered unsecured. And then, very importantly, perhaps the most important, the cloud will become much more intelligent. What I mean by that is, all those AI things I said are building up out of the cloud, and we're going to hear a lot more about AI as the day goes on. Dave Shubmel will be talking about it later today. We believe that by 2019, AI services out of the cloud will be integrated into about 40% of all those digital transformation use cases that we talked about, and about 100% of IoT. Why is that? It's because, very clearly, those IoT devices generate a lot of data. That data is not very useful without AI at the back end to make sense out of it, right? And of course, AI doesn't have much value without data, and a lot of that data coming from IoT. So we tend to think now of AI and IoT as two ends of the same thing. Instead of saying AI and IoT, I now say it's really like AIoT. Because one without the other is pretty useless. And then two other changes in this Cloud 2.0 we'll talk about in a few minutes, but very important. It's going to be much more industry-focused, verticalized, industry-specialized. And believe it or not, for those of you who are in the channel, hallelujah, it's going to be very channel-mediated. The channel is making a comeback in the digital economy. So, what's the point here? I think very clearly, it's not only that the cloud is the center of the innovation universe for our clients, but we better be very careful, because if we think we've mastered the cloud is about to change, and we better optimize for this new cloud, Cloud 2.0. Now, the other end of that infrastructure are connected things. And we are going to hear a lot about IoT. Vernon Turner and other analysts, Carrie McGilvery and others, will be talking this afternoon. And of course, Tom Manelli is going to talk about one very important category, augmented reality and virtual reality, a little bit later this morning. So I just want to connect a few simple dots around the world of IoT. So one simple, obvious point is that we are seeing an incredible speciation, almost a Cambrian explosion of diversity in what can be connected to the edge of these digital networks. Everything from smart prosthetics to robots to drones to digital signage to home intelligent assistants like the Echo or Google Home, you name it. So connected cars, self-driving cars, and we're going to see a boatload of them, right? So there were about 15 billion last year, according to our estimates, and we're predicting that by 2020 it'll be about 30 billion connected IoT devices, and by the time we get to 2025 it'll be 80 billion. And by the way, I'm willing to make a bet with anyone right here that by the time we get out to 2020, that 30 billion is going to be too low. And the 80 billion is going to be too low. So this thing is just growing immensely. So I think we all know that. The key point I want to make that's really about connecting dots if you're in the IoT world is this. What I'm showing you here is a prediction of IoT spending in 2020. And again, it may be hard to see all the detail here, but you can get the general flavor. It's in just about every single industry you can imagine. Right? So IoT is a very industry-specific, very verticalized world. There's no such thing, in my view, as a general or horizontal IoT strategy. Because if that's what you have, you better find a lot of partners between you and the solution, because all those solutions are highly verticalized. And so, in every single industry, IoT devices and strategies are being envisioned, they're being invented, and they're being implemented specific to that industry. And so I want you to pay attention as we talk through the rest of that digital innovation chart, those neighborhoods I talked about. You'll see that you need to connect to the developers that community is verticalizing. The data providers are becoming heavily verticalized. The channel players are becoming heavily industry focused. And of course, the industry communities are by their nature. And of course, at the very end of the rainbow, those digital use cases, most of them are highly verticalized. So very important to think about connecting those dots, and particularly those industry dots. So what about this new innovation infrastructure? It's a kind of a simple thing. This is the table stakes, right? This is where innovation is going to happen. If you are intending to be a player in the digital economy and you aren't either delivering parts of this infrastructure or building it or using it or helping others to use it, you are just a non-player in the digital economy. Okay, so I think that's pretty self-evident, but in case people weren't sure about that, that's where we are. So that's interesting. It's where the innovations will run. But where are the innovations going to come from in this digital economy? Well, a few years ago, we came up with this very sophisticated mathematical equation that says innovation, and really digital innovation, equals code plus data. And I think it's almost like IoT and AI. Code without data is not very useful. And of course, data without the code that helps transform it into some sort of actionable decision is not very useful either. So these two neighborhoods, the developers and the data providers, are extremely important. I think of them as the wellspring for digital innovation. And so how do we need to connect our dots to this community? We're going to hear from who we're going to hear from. Let's see, we're going to hear from Larry Carvalho this afternoon about the developer community. And we're going to hear from Dan Vesett this afternoon about the data providers. But let me just share a few things here. Last year, you may remember, around developers, I said that those digital transformation type of companies, your customers who are embarking on digital transformation journeys, that they are busy growing their digital transformation developer, or DX developer populations. We predicted that by 2018, they would double or triple the number of developers they have, their digital developers, in their own organizations. And by the way, we still are standing by that prediction. That is happening. If anything, it's going faster than that. But what I want to share with you this morning is something that's more in line with this connecting the dots to ecosystems story, that none of us are sufficient on our own, including our customers. We are predicting that in this world of developers, that by the time we get to 2020, those digital innovation teams in your customer sites, they are going to get 80% or more of the code that they build into their digital services from external developer communities, a lot of them open source communities. Does that surprise anyone? No one wants to reinvent the wheel. And everybody understands that if it's me trying to out-innovate the world, I'm going to lose. So I've got to tap into a lot of other people's innovation. And so that means that if you look at, GitHub is kind of the gold standard right now. If you want to look at where's innovation happening in the world of code sharing, but of course there are others, SourceForge, Google Code, the cloud mega platform guys, so the big cloud guys, the Amazons, Googles, IBMs, Microsofts, you name it, and on, are all trying to create code sharing communities within their clouds. And of course, you've got great communities, open source communities like the Apache Foundation, the Linux Foundation, are where a lot of this code is coming from. In fact, some of you may not recognize, but that thing that says code, that blue box, that's the US federal government. Last fall, they opened up this code.gov, and that is the open source code sharing site for federal agencies. Right now, there are about 50 different open source projects from about 10 different agencies in there. So this is happening everywhere. And so to me, I think it's obvious that for your clients, your customers, they're saying, if we want to innovate in our industry, we're going to have to tap into this bigger world of developers. And I guess my advice for you would be, if you're going to support them, you're going to have to figure out your strategy for how you're going to tap into all of that innovation from outside code developers. This becomes so much more important, in some ways more important than your own internal development, at least as important. And then, of course, on the data side, same kind of thing. By 2018, these enterprises, these customers that are almost all of them that are doing digital transformation journeys, they're looking to increase their outside data pipelines, you might say, external data sources into their organizations by 3 to 5-fold. And again, you can see you see commercial, lots of old-time data providers, D&B and IRI. You've got kind of companies that are now starting to monetize more and more of their data. You've got open data projects and on and on. The Broad Institute right across the road with a directory for genomic data. So again, what's the point here? To me, if we want to be successful in this fast-paced, massive-scale innovation world, we are going to have to have very good strategies for deciding what we're not going to do and what we're going to use outside parties to do. And by the way, if we have innovations, this is another important piece of the puzzle. If we have our own innovations and we want the world to adopt it, we can't just keep it inside our own four walls. We're going to have to find out a way to get that out to where the developers are so that we can get adoption by the innovation community. That is a counterculture strategy from most tech companies of the last 30 years, but it's a gold standard for growth for the next 20 years, right? So just again, as I said, we're going to have a lot of discussion about this, but such an important area. Now that's where innovation comes from. The other important thing is, how does innovation get that last mile out to the customer? And a lot of folks thought, as the cloud came in, the self-service cloud, well, we don't really need any channel anymore because stuff is in the cloud. Customers are just going to go and get what they need. Well, I think what we've learned is that the digital and cloud world need a channel every bit as much as the old world, because it is every bit as complicated out there for customers when they want to do anything that is of any level of sophistication. They need a channel. And as a matter of fact, we predict that by the time we get to 2020, over 70% of the cloud players' revenues are going to be channel mediated. They're going to be touched by the channel players. But here's the catch. It's not going to be the traditional channel player. Or let me rephrase that. It could be traditional channel players, and it'll be new generation players, but it will definitely be a new channel business model. A new channel business model. So key point here, channel, very important. Rising piece of the puzzle. but a different model. So what do we mean by new players, new model? Well, here's an example of some of the kind of the newer players in this digital economy, kind of cloud-centric channel world. You know, an example I'll show here is Globant, which they specialize, they are consultants and integrators and developers that help customers that have consumer-facing businesses create personalized consumer experiences as part of their services to their marketplace. So in the old days, would say, okay, these are consultants, you know, they're developers, they're integrators, but you know, what do they do? It's a little bit different. So they have all their consulting, but they also build code. So they're like a software company. They have their own IP, their own code. They put that code out on a platform. So it's a platform as a service model to basically make it simpler for sharing and distribution of that code. And they use, get this, they use a software as a service type subscription pricing model. I mean, that's a very different model for a channel player, right? This is a totally different type of species. And my colleague, Steve White, who many of you who follow the channel world and partner world know, he's speaking later today. He's talking about this new channel. He's generalized this idea of, well, what does the new digital economy channel player look like? And you can see they use third platform technology. So they are experts on AI and on IoT and on the cloud and on mobile. They are specialized, and in the context of our discussion, that typically means they have laser beamed in on some of those digital transformation use cases and industries, and so they're not generic technology people. They are about business solutions, very specific. They are about business executives, and they are also about IP, their own IP. So I guess my basic message on that, on channel, is that if you are a player anywhere in that digital innovation graph, your own digital innovation graph, you better find these channel players. And you better find a lot of them, because you're going to need them to be able to close that last mile to reach the customer. Okay, don't buy into the idea that we don't need the channel anymore. We absolutely do. So prematurely, here's our last stop. And the last neighborhood, this neighborhood in this digital innovation ecosystem, the graph, is probably the most important because it's where our customers live. It's in their industries. And so part of this picture, as you can see, industry platforms and marketplaces. If you've come to IDC in the last several years, you've heard us talk about industry platforms and marketplaces, and you know, what are these? These are companies like GE or the New York Stock Exchange or John Deere, or you know, probably for the last 5 years, I love talking about Illumina, which is a company in the genomic sequencing space. And what they do is they want to become the digital innovation crossroads for their own industry. You know, they look at, you know, companies like Microsoft and IBM, Amazon, others that have built large ecosystems around them, SAP, others, and they say, you know, we want to do the same thing, because when we can build a platform and an ecosystem, that is a super power position in the industry. And so what they're doing is they are, collecting data that's relevant for the industry. They are providing apps and services that are specific to their industry, and most important, they're inviting in other developers to come and build on their platform to create a marketplace of solutions. So, Scott Lundstrom is going to talk about this very important community right after me this morning. So I'd say pay close attention, because if you get these type of companies as your customers, you're not just getting a company, you're getting a large company's ecosystem, right? So as these guys are building their platforms and communities, if you can somehow be a provider underneath, they don't want to reinvent the tech wheel. They want to use yours. So if you can get in there, they're very powerful. And by the way, in case you're wondering, how do you find out if your customers are among these? Just do this. Think about your biggest customers. Think about their URL, right? So let's say www.deere, for johndeere.com. Take away the www and type in developer. So developer.deere.com. And you can do this for a lot of different companies, and what you'll find are things like this. You'll find developer communities and sites. So Walmart has one, you can see here, Citi, John Deere, Procter & Gamble, General Motors. You'd be surprised how many companies are trying to become these industry platform players, right? So again, I'll leave that to Scott, very important. But what I want to do as we talk about these industry platform and communities is instead think about, not about the big mega platforms in the middle. I want to think about, well, what companies in each industry are going to connect to these platforms? And that over time is going to be almost everybody. Almost every one of your customers in their industry is going to connect into these industry platforms and communities because they're going to be suppliers of their own digital services. That's where we started today, right? Didn't we say, hey, they are transforming, their industry is transforming, they're creating digital services as part of their new delivery to their marketplace. How are they going to get that to market? They're plugging into these industry platforms. So we predict that by 2020, 75% of Global 500 companies will be they'll be suppliers of technology. Now, I think that's going to easily be an underestimate right there. So, but what does that mean? I just want to repeat that. That means that almost all of your customers are going to become tech suppliers. Tech suppliers. So we talked about the new tech industry a little earlier on the title slide, the new tech industry. Guess what? Your customers are part of it. Move over, right? So you're going to have to think about, are they partners? Are they customers? Are we suppliers to them? What's the relationship? But what I want to show you just is that if you think about these customers, they're plugging into industry platforms. We said they're creating their own digital developer communities. We said they're plugging into outside digital developer communities and data suppliers. And they're doing one other thing. I just want to bring to your attention because this is so important. And I want to take that pin. Remember I said, let's pin up corporates buying tech startups. I'm going to take that pin out now. Let's talk about that. I don't know how many, I pulled up the developers and the startups on the other bubble and put it next to the industry players for this reason. I don't know how many of you saw this. In January, the New York Times had a story about non-tech companies buying tech startups. And this is what they said. In 2016, the number of technology startups that were bought by non-tech companies surpassed the number that were bought by you guys. Right? So they're competing with you to buy the latest tech innovation. And why is that? Again, circling back, it's because they are becoming so tech dependent for their innovation that they need it. And let me give you an interesting example. Talk about a company that is about, their product is about as non-tech as you can imagine. Campbell's Soup. What did Campbell's Soup do? Last October, they bought a startup called Habit. Habit is in the business of creating a personalized nutrition plan for consumers. So, if you sign up with Habit, they send you a little box. It comes in the mail. You open it up, you swab your cheek, get that genetic sample, send it back to them. They actually sequence your genome and then produce, supposedly, a personalized, optimized nutrition plan for you. Now, why is Campbell's Soup buying a company that does this? And so Denise Morrison, who's their CEO, she said something that I think you'll hear echoed in just about every customer of yours at the CEO level. In her case, she's saying the food industry is being transformed by the fusion of food, well-being, and technology, right? So Campbell's isn't a food company anymore. It's about kind of a food-based, nutrition-based well-being company. If you saw the Super Bowl ad for Ford, they talked about we're in the mobility business. They showed bike sharing and car sharing and, of course, cars and trucks. Everyone is saying it's about an experience for our customers. And she said, this is the part I like best. She said, Campbell's evolution requires fresh thinking, new models of innovation. I like that. Does that sound familiar? New models of innovation, highly networked. Smart external development, remember plugging into those outside communities, venture investing like Habit, and all to create an ecosystem of innovative partners. It's amazing. Campbell's Soup, think about that picture, that innovation graph picture. Campbell's Soup is building a digital innovation graph and ecosystem in order to compete in their corner of the digital economy as we go forward. Now, I want to share one other thought with you, and that is that sometimes dots aren't things or companies or stuff. Sometimes it's people, right? So I went to an event a few months ago that was a gathering of corporate executives focused on corporate innovation and mostly on digital innovation. And I was very interested to find out who the heck is going to show up to this event. And let me show you some of the titles. These are the executives, some examples, some real titles of companies and executives that are thinking about how do they build these digital innovation graphs. And some of them we know. Chief Digital Officer, yeah, been there, done that. Chief Innovation Officer. But look at some of the other titles. GM of the Innovation Ecosystem. External innovation. Open platform, so a platform model. Again, platforms, outside players, big ecosystems. Open innovation. So you get the idea. To me, the existence of these people and their titles is just more proof that this stuff we talked about earlier, the digital innovation graph, that's not academic. It's not a theory. It's real. And these are the people who you need to contact and connect with in order to become part of their digital transformation experience and spending. Let me leave you with one last thing. You know, I look all the time at Fortune 500 lists and other lists at companies as I'm doing my research to see, well, who's going down this road and who's making progress. And you can see here, I clipped it off. This is the Fortune 7. And so as I was looking through this list, I didn't have to go very far to find a company that is absolutely building a digital innovation ecosystem and graph. And number 5, McKesson, right? So you can see it's almost a $200 billion company in health supplies and technologies. And what I found was that McKesson, over the past couple of years, has been building something they just released last fall, something they call the Intelligence Hub. The Intelligence Hub. So let me show you a video that they released to promote their McKesson Intelligence Hub. I don't know about you, but when I look at that video, I can't help but think, again, that this digital innovation model, kind of a digital native way of thinking and operating, that again, that it's not a theory. This is the growing reality that is happening in more and more of our customers' industries and in their own companies. And as I look at McKesson specifically, I think about here is a $200 billion company. It's a 184-year-old company that is giving birth inside, at its core, to a digital native, a digital innovation ecosystem. Okay, I mean, that is something. Talk about transformation. That is a transformation. So, where does that leave us? To me, here's what I'd recommend. If I were you, I would be taking this picture, without the head in the middle of it, and I would be putting it up on my wall and I'd be pinning it. And I'd be thinking, in this economy that is becoming, the global economy is becoming the digital economy, every company is becoming a tech company, and the pace and volume of innovation is just going way off the charts. I need to look at this and think about, how do I build my own digital innovation network and ecosystem and graph? How do I do that? It starts with asking, Number one, as I said, outside in. Have I done a good job of identifying, well, what digital innovation and transformation efforts by my customers am I uniquely qualified to play a role in serving? And so the question then is, where am I? Where do I live in this picture? Am I in one of these 6 big neighborhoods we talked about, or am I somewhere else? Not everyone's in one of those. There are people who they're not the big cloud mega platforms, maybe a SaaS player, could be an infrastructure player, could be a network services provider, right? And so the question you have to ask is, I'm going to think again, what am I going to do? Am I focused enough? Have I got an unassailable advantage? Do I need to shift where I am? Because the next question is, I've got to sharpen what I do because so many people are doing so many other things. I don't want to reinvent what they're doing. I need to then think about, how do I connect the dots? How do I connect my dots of my value all the way through these other neighborhoods so it makes it all the way to those digital innovation use cases, right? That's going to be the way I compete at scale, at high volume. I'm going to have to think about, speaking of scale, I talked about this last year, a scale that is one we've never lived in before. Why do I keep calling this a graph? Why don't I call it a supply chain and a distribution network and a value chain? The reason is those models are obsolete. The scale you typically see in a supply chain or distribution network, they can't handle billions of individual people who you may be serving directly or you may be serving indirectly, or millions of enterprises, or tens of millions of developers, or tens of thousands of data providers. You get the idea. This is about APIs, digital services, and super fast pace and rapid life cycles, right? So I need to adapt to that type of speed. And of course, after thinking about our own digital innovation model, we have to be able to clearly explain to our customers that we understand and are ready to help them as they are trying to do exactly what we are trying to do, right? So they are trying to do the same thing and that we have a role. And I think what links us and our customers together is, in this world, it's very clear that it doesn't matter what your heritage was, what your age is, where you've come from. We all need to be digital natives and to operate like digital natives in order to compete in this new digital economy. So let me leave you with just a quote. This is from Al Gore. It was about the environment, but it absolutely applies to us as we think about our future in this digital economy. It takes time to connect the dots. I know that. But I also know there can be a day of reckoning when you wish you had connected the dots more quickly. Amen. Amen. So let's, all of us, connect our dots and our customers' dots more quickly so that we're ready as we move past the dawning of the DX economy and into the full light of day. So thanks, and have a great Directions.